You're not saying, here, get an education, go and earn as much as you can, live as rich a life as possible, and then, if you need to, sort of get married and have children once you've had all, you've lived life to the full. You suddenly you'll be graduating students who think no, marriage is living life to the full, and raising the next generation is living life to the full, and is how God describes a blessed life.
Dr. Timothy Edwards, then. So you are the academic dean and the principal of Selden College, a brand new university in the UK. And it's good to talk to you. I'll tell you why. It's really interested to talk to you because there's not a lot of universities in the UK where, in order to be a member of staff or faculty or join the university, you have to believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, and that in fact sex is immutable. You're either a man or you're a woman, and these swapsy things don't actually exist, and you can't subscribe to that. Now, I would say that's unique for universities in the UK. Would I be correct?
Obviously, some theological colleges and Bible colleges would require that of their faculty, uh, but yeah, not any universities as such, no.
Well, first of all, great to meet you. Thank you very much for joining us and our tens of thousands of supporters who incidentally come from all faiths and none, but support this notion of man-woman marriage being, the thing that makes the difference. Really would be interested in knowing about this. So tell us a little bit more. I believe you've got your first intake in October this year. So tell us a bit about the background. Why have you done this? Why have you felt the need to do this? What is this? And how's it going so far?
Okay, those are big questions. I will try
Yeah.
and be as concise as possible for you. The background, I worked in the United States for 9 years as academic dean of a small Christian liberal arts college in Moscow, Idaho, in the Pacific Northwest. And I myself have always been committed to Christian education. We've either homeschooled our children or been at Christian schools or homeschool co-ops. So I had a commitment to Christian education, but this was my first experience of a Christian higher education, which is not uncommon in the United States, but it
Yeah.
is.
Oh yes, I've heard about the Pensacola handshake and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So I ended up there, and I was academic dean for 8 of the 9 years that I was teaching there, and I got to, in one sense, see firsthand and appreciate the fruitfulness of having a faculty united in their trust in Christ and in what sort of student they were trying to form with this broad liberal arts curriculum that they were teaching. Um, and you saw the change over the 4 years because it's 4 years in the States and the fruitfulness of it. And so when it came time for us to come back, the question is, what do we do? And various people had already sort of half jokingly said, why don't you start a Christian college? And so we obviously prayed and thought, no, I believe something that the Lord wants us to do, and we think it's of tremendous value. And for us, it's a recovery of something that we had.
Yeah, because it's kind of where the university started,
Yes,
wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, you Oxford and Cambridge, in order to matriculate in Oxford in the 16th century, you had to avow adherent to 39 Articles, Book of Common Prayer, the royal supremacy. So it was a very Protestant Christian institution, and it remained that
Mm.
way for a for a good deal of time. So I started sharing the vision with one or two people, a couple of friends who wanted to be involved, sort of joined in, and you keep taking small steps and sort of expecting to hit the brick wall, but no brick wall appeared. So we just kept taking these steps, and come October the 6th, we will be opening doors to our first cohort, four students, four young people with remarkable faith, and believe this is the right thing for them to do. And they're really choosing a type of education, um, and a vision of education that goes beyond preparing you for a job. So in education, and well from your own experiences, I'm sure education has become narrower and narrower and narrower in terms of its
Mm.
goals and its expanse of what it wants to teach. Because they've lost any concept of truth, they've lost any concept of the sort of human being you want to produce, and it just becomes a transfer of knowledge with some other aspects to it. And I think that's just a very modern, truncated, anemic view of education. And I wanted to recover that robust vision of Christian education that you find in from Augustine all the way through to John Milton.
And I think much has been written about our current university system and how it's kind of it's this phrase, the long march through the institutions. Well, the universities have been exemplary in welcoming in that march, it would seem. And that an awful lot has been going on, and many books have been written on this.
Yeah.
Centres of ideological stronghold, where anything kind of traditional is no longer deemed worthy of presence. In fact, cancel culture has been prevailing to the extent that the government have had to say, look, they've had to legislate around free speech in universities to say you just can't stop people from talking in universities. That's the whole point, exploring ideas and exploring themes and concepts. So you're there to address or redress some balance, if you like, in that sphere of activity. Obviously, you're starting small. So in terms of breadth of offering so far, tell us a bit about that. In terms of accreditation, can you accredit your own degrees? Are they the normal 360 credits, or how's it working?
As an industry, if we call it higher education industry, it's in complete turmoil financially. So, currently 40% of all of our institutions are in danger of running a deficit. You saw Spurgeon's College shut at very short notice just recently. So one of the increasingly important tests is financial viability. And we have 4 students. We're not financially viable in any stretch of the imagination in a objective sense by an accreditor looking in from outside. We have enough money to last this year. Any money we raise plus tuition for next year will go towards next year, and then so we're set up well, but we don't have big funds behind us. This is a very much an act of faith on everyone's part. At some point, we will consider accreditation. The two realities behind accreditation are: one, it's a remarkably expensive process. It would cost us in the region of 150 to 200,000 pounds over 3 years, which for an institution our size is ridiculously expensive. And secondly, once you do get accredited, you are a data collection organization for the government. You pay for the privilege of collecting data for the accreditors so that they can make sure that their diversity quotas and equality quotas and whatever they are, so that are met. And I'm not convinced that's necessarily a wise use of our money. So it's an open question.
So how long will students be with you? What will they study? What will they leave with?
So it's a 3-year degree level education. So they'll come out with a Selden College certificate, which will be a degree level certificate. We are starting off with one program, which is the liberal arts, Christian liberal arts, which
Brilliant.
is
Wow.
a generalist degree, backbone of theology and a classical language,
Yep.
and then history, literature, philosophy, politics, economics.
Right.
It's 3 years. It's going to be run on the traditional sort of Oxbridge model that anything you do up until the last 2 weeks and doesn't get graded in terms of applying towards the degree, but you have 9 3-hour exams in the last 2 weeks of your career, and your degree is awarded on that principle.
Summative assessment. Back again.
One summative assessment, or 9 summative assessments.
Yeah.
Which obviously is for many quite a controversial decision. But I think when you read around the damage that AI is doing to education in terms of its reliability as an indicator of a student's work. Is it the student's work, or did a bot write it? I think the need to sit a student down in a room with no electronic device, with a pen and paper, and asking them questions is a reliable means of testing their understanding.
I think so. The Viva concept, both of us having done doctorates, we know what that's like, where you've got to sit in a room with some experts and defend what you're talking about, and you've got no AI to help you. It's just you on your own, and that You can't get that. You can't fake that. It's, you either get it done or you don't. That's absolutely right.
When I taught in America, New St Andrews, they had at the end of that, they had as many times as possible a one-on-one exam with your instructor at the end of every course, which was brutal for the instructor when you've got a class of 30 and you've got 30 one-on-one exams to give. But it was for me as an instructor, it was a great insight into what they'd understood, not what they'd memorized, but what they'd understood. Because you can ask questions and then they answer, and then you ask another question. And I would say to my students, they say, "What are you looking?" I said, when does the conversation end?" If it ends after the first question, your understanding is not great.
Absolutely, and also, dare I say, for the employer. So the employer actually knows that, well, this student has understood something, has gone on a journey, and has acquired a level of knowledge and almost even maybe wisdom as well in how to use that knowledge in a way that, let's face it, a lot of universities are still having the model with their formative and summative assessments, where in fact they're saying you've got 24 hours to submit an essay on this topic. And students are doing what students would do, which is to try and do as well as they can by going and asking AI to help them. And that is still happening up and down the land,
Oh, it is.
which is remarkable.
It is. It is happening
Yeah.
more than we realize.
Yeah, and that's not, I suppose, Coalition for Marriage. It's not particularly our beef, but you mentioned earlier on developing the student, not just academically, but developing them as a person, as an individual, and how these foundations of belief that you require, such as marriage, how that helps develop. So tell me a little bit more about how you see the university developing that character.
John Milton talks about repairing the ruins of our first parents, in such a way as they would know God and possess their souls of true virtue. And so you're seeking to know God through all these subjects and all things in relationship to Him in a way that doesn't terminate on the subject itself. It moves beyond it to the love of God, the love of neighbor, and the formation of the individual around the ideas of truth. So the liberal arts program that we developed, we or are developing, we relied on Bonaventure's reduction of the arts to theology, where he contrasts the different areas of knowledge in the world, and that which traditionally falls into the area of liberal arts is built around in one sense, truth in three areas: the truth of speech, the truth of things, that's how the world is, and the truth of conduct. And the truth of conduct is for the individual and the family and the nation. And so when you see education as forming a student, so they possess their souls of true virtue around truth in these areas, how they speak, how they think about the world, and how they act in the world, you're constantly applying everything you learn through that prism and through that lens. And of course, relationships with one another, commitment to the institutions that God has set up. They realize that their education is not simply about them. It's about them becoming a certain people, so that the families, the church, and the nation are blessed as a result of their presence in that society. And so you're forming them in such a way that they value the things that God values, and He values marriage. You're not saying, here, get an education, go and earn as much as you can, live as rich a life as possible, and then, if you need to, sort of get married and have children once you've had you've lived life to the full. You'll be graduating students who think, no, marriage is living life to the full.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and raising the next generation is living life to the full, and is how God describes a blessed life.
Sacrifice, commitment, honor, all those sorts of things that
Those things,
seem to have
yes.
been dropped from every curriculum possible these days.
That's right. And we live in this obsessively individualistic society, and education has become obsessively individualistic in such a way as it's simply about getting as well paid job as possible. And of course, people have suddenly realized that most degrees don't enable you to do that anymore, and that you could do better somewhere else.
So I'm minded of, was it Blaise Pascal? The supreme achievement of reason is to teach us that there is an end of reason, and that education in this concept says, look, there's more than just the acquisition of knowledge here. There's something more to it and something more meaningful to developing you as an adult. But how does that? I joked at the beginning about the Pensacola handshake, which is one of these American anachronisms in a university where there's no physical contact between boys and girls. So you have this kind of air handshake sort of thing, which is, an infamous joke. But how does that? How does this look then? I mean, you're not expecting your students to be off down the pub getting drunk on a Friday night, I'm guessing. How does student life look and feel at Selden College?
I think because it's a small cohort of 4 students, there'll be a certain commitment to one another in regards to their studies. They'll be seeking to help one another and work something out, and there'll be a social life that will develop. And my guess is they're going to be at least once a week around my dinner table, and once a week around other people who work at the college's dinner tables. So there's not going to be this uh, strong divide between faculty and students in that they don't get to know those, because one aspect of classical Christian education is imitation. I want to employ people whose students look up to and go, I'd like my family to conduct themselves around the table like that. I would like my children to interact with me the way that their children interact with me, with those sorts of things. So the the families and the lives of the instructors are, not a completely open book, obviously, but they are open to their students because they realize that's an essential part of education and discipleship in the ancient world.
So do you have to be very rigorous in your student selection? It's not just academic grades; it's a lot more than that. I mean, we have most of our supporters would be Christians, but we certainly do have a lot of people from no faith background at all. Um, are you saying to come to Selden, you actually need to profess a faith, or you need to agree to a doctrinal basis, or
Yeah, so students have to sign up to a basic statement of faith and code of conduct, which is Christian historically. Um, so the application process, we don't require any specific route through to university, O levels, A levels, or that's me showing my age, GCSEs and A levels, or the American SAT, or a homeschooling curriculum that goes up to 18. We set a 3-hour exam, which they come and take in Oxford, where we are, and then the following day we have about an hour-long interview with them, one-on-one. And so the application form, academic pastoral references, their exam, and that interview is the means by which we assess whether they're a good fit. Because I think one of the things we forget about in when we consider educational options for our children, or for ourselves even, we think, who am I going to be studying under? That's a really important question. But who am I going to be studying with is as important. And it's remarkable how fruitful a classroom that's united around a belief and a commitment to one another is, especially as an instructor. When I taught in that classroom, I was like, wow, what a great classroom to teach, and what a great bunch of students to have. All engaged, all understood that they're there because God has placed them there, and it's a wonderful thing.
so scalability? Then, I mean, where do you see this going? Would you ever see it being 44,000 students, 40,000 students? What's your vision, or would you always see it being relatively small?
And so I insist on calling it a college because we're sort of recovering the Christian college, the shared life aspect. Um, so once you get to a certain size, let's say the Lord blesses it remarkably, and we get to about 150, 175 students, that's getting to the point where it's now getting difficult to do the sort of education that we are wanting to provide. At that point, you would start a separate institution somewhere else, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and so no one institution would get above a certain size because the nature of the education would change, and would become less connected to the formation of a student because there's less time and you don't know them.
And it's that kind of 150 number, isn't it, really? Which
It is, yeah.
excellent. And so if people want to find out more, if people want to even support you, if people are interested in coming along and joining, where would they go to find out more?
So we have a website, it's southerncollege.org, which gives you
We'll pop that up on the
a
screen.
good amount of
Yep.
information. There's an opportunity there to sign up for updates. And then you would be on the list for receiving the regular updates that we send out. The opportunity to give for those who want to. There are email and contact details there if you want to reach out and ask more questions. Yeah.
Great. What a fantastic idea. What a practical, effort-driven aim at making a difference. I absolutely love it to bits. Will you come back and tell us in a short while how it's all going?
I'd love to. That would be fantastic. Yes.
Well, Dr. Tim Edwards, a real privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you.